Bruce Willis moved into a care home on August 15, 2025. His family spent $200,000 a year just to keep him safe. The man who once shouted over explosions in Die Hard can no longer speak. But that's not the worst part. Emma revealed something she had kept hidden for years. She thought Bruce was just being distant, but she had no idea his brain was slowly dying. The disease had been stealing him away long before anyone knew. What his family discovered will break your heart. Bruce Willis was born on March 19, 1955, in a small town in West Germany called Idar Oberstein. His father was an American soldier stationed there after the war, and his mother was a German woman from Kassel. From the beginning, Bruce's world was divided between two cultures. He grew up on a military base, surrounded by the lingering ghosts of a recent war, caught between American discipline and German traditions. But when he was just 2 years old, everything changed. In 1957, his father left the army, and the entire family crossed the ocean to New Jersey. Suddenly, Bruce was no longer the boy from Germany. He became just another kid in a tough American neighborhood, surrounded by factory workers and struggling families. His father worked with metal while his mother took small jobs at banks. They didn't have much, and Bruce felt like he didn't quite belong anywhere. As the 1960s unfolded, something troubled him deeply. Around the age of 6, Bruce developed a painful stutter. Words stuck in his throat, and whenever he tried to speak, nothing came out right. Children laughed at him and cruelly nicknamed him Buck Buck. Bruce often tried to defend himself with his fists, swinging wildly just to push back against the ridicule. But the shame of not being able to speak clearly haunted him. Sometimes it took minutes to get a single sentence out, crushing his confidence. By the time he was 10, school had already become a battlefield. The stutter didn't just hurt, it isolated him. High school might have been the breaking point. He skipped classes just to avoid being called on, and he pulled pranks to distract attention away from his speech. Then, one day in the early 1970s, when he was about 15, he took a risk and joined the drama club. Something unbelievable happened. The moment he stepped on stage and read his lines, the stutter disappeared. It was like magic. Suddenly he could speak fluently and clearly without fear. For the first time, people listened. Teachers were stunned. Bruce realized that when he stepped into someone else's role, the words came freely. Acting gave him back his voice, and that discovery changed everything. By 1973, he had become student council president. Though some kids still mocked him, he didn't care. He had found something that made him feel alive. In 1975, while studying theater at Montclair State University, 2 professors provided speech therapy that helped him even further. By 1977, however, Bruce was tired of school. He dropped out and moved straight to New York City, determined to chase something bigger. With no money and no connections, he worked long hours as a bartender just to survive. Sometimes he slept on couches or squeezed into tiny apartments. He skated to work, played the harmonica for tips, and turned the bar into a stage. Those years were messy and hard. In his first year, he faced more than 100 rejections. Still, little by little, he started landing roles in off-Broadway shows. His first real part came in 1977 in a play called Heaven and Earth. Even though the pay was low and rejection was constant, he kept going. Sometimes he even had to sleep on benches when things got rough, but people were beginning to notice him. He earned small roles in commercials, bit parts in movies, and in 1980, a brief scene alongside Frank Sinatra. One night, while bartending, Bruce got into a fight trying to protect someone. His nose was badly broken and emergency surgery was needed. Doctors warned that the injury might damage his voice, but he recovered. He returned tougher. The scar remained, giving him a certain edge. Nobody knew then that he would become one of the biggest action stars in the world. But in those cramped, smoky New York bars, he built something far stronger than fame. He built friendships that would last decades. He met John Goodman behind the counter at Chelsea Central, and together they put on wild, improvised performances that stunned small crowds. They were broke, earning just a few dollars a week, but the passion was real. They worked without scripts, throwing themselves into raw emotions, shouting, crying, and playing it all out. These performances sharpened Bruce's timing and gave him the spark that would later electrify movie screens. In 1985, everything shifted. Bruce walked into an audition for a new TV show called Moonlighting. About 3,000 actors were after the role, including seasoned performers and radio stars. ABC rejected Bruce 11 times, but he came back one final time with a shaved head, earrings, and an attitude that could not be ignored. He ad-libbed his lines, made the producers laugh, and suddenly the outsider with the stutter was the one they wanted. On March 3, 1985, Moonlighting premiered and Bruce Willis became a star overnight. The show was chaotic and expensive. It took twice as long to film as most shows, and the scripts ran 120 pages. But Bruce's charm, speed, and unpredictability made it a sensation. Tensions on set rose, especially with co-star Sybil Shepherd. By 1986, things were boiling over. They argued and snapped at each other before scenes, sometimes refusing to speak off camera. The stress wore Bruce down until, in 1988, he collapsed from exhaustion and was hospitalized. Scripts were delayed, ratings dipped, but fans were hooked on the fiery chemistry. Behind the scenes, Bruce was burning out, yet in front of the camera, he was magnetic. And while all of this unfolded, Bruce shocked the public with something unexpected. He released a music album called The Return of Bruno in January 1987. Nobody thought a TV star could top the charts, but he did. The album went gold with 500,000 sales, even reaching number 2 in the UK. Critics rolled their eyes, but fans didn't care. Bruce sang alongside soul legends and turned it into something unforgettable. Bold, strange, and fun, it was pure Bruce. Still, the grind of Moonlighting took its toll. Episodes cost over $1 million each, and Bruce was pushed to the edge. His co-star's pregnancy in 1987 caused more delays, and a major writer's strike in 1988 nearly ended the show for good. Finally, on May 14, 1989, Moonlighting ended. Bruce had given it everything. By then, his name was already echoing through Hollywood. His salary had skyrocketed to $50,000 per episode, a huge leap from the $1,500 gigs he'd started with. At that time, Bruce Willis wasn't supposed to be a movie star. He was the charming TV guy from Moonlighting, but fate intervened. A script called Die Hard was making the rounds in Hollywood in the late 1980s. Big stars like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone had already turned it down. Even Frank Sinatra was asked, since the story was technically a sequel to one of his old films, but he passed as well. Then, out of nowhere, Bruce Willis got the offer. The real shock wasn't just that he was chosen, it was that the studio offered him $5 million. That was superstar money, usually reserved for Dustin Hoffman or Robert Redford. Industry insiders thought the studio had lost its mind. Filming began in late 1987, mostly inside Fox Plaza in Los Angeles. When the movie was released on July 15, 1988, no one expected it to explode the way it did. But Die Hard earned over $140 million worldwide, turning Bruce Willis into a full-blown action hero. Yet there was a price. During one of the explosive stunts, a blast went off too close, leaving him with permanent partial hearing loss in his left ear. He kept it quiet at the time so production wouldn't be interrupted, but years later the damage was revealed, and it lingered well into the 2000s. Still, that rough-edged, relatable energy he gave John McClane changed everything. He didn't look like a superhero. He looked like an ordinary guy trapped in impossible situations, and audiences loved him for it. Then, just a year later, Bruce surprised the world again. He signed on to voice a talking baby in Look Who's Talking. At first it sounded like a joke, but the real shock was what he earned. For just 4 days of voice work, Bruce Willis walked away with $10 million. The reason was a smart deal that gave him a share of the profits. The movie itself was made for under $10 million, but ended up earning almost $300 million worldwide. His voice, full of charm and sarcasm, became a hit with families everywhere. The movie turned into a franchise, and he collected another $10 million for the sequel. People began to realize he wasn't just lucky, he was smart too. Then he tried something totally different. In September 1989, In Country came out. It was a slow, emotional story about a Vietnam veteran living in a quiet town. Bruce grew a mustache and played the role with quiet pain. His own father had fought in the Korean War, and perhaps that connection made the performance feel even more real. Critics responded positively, with Roger Albert giving it 3 stars, but audiences didn't turn up. The film only made a few $1 million. Still, it proved that Bruce wasn't afraid to take risks, even if it meant walking away from another guaranteed hit. By 1990, he was back in full action mode. Die Hard 2 hit theaters on July 4th, and this time Bruce knew his worth. He earned $7.5 million up front along with a cut of the profits. The movie went on to gross over $240 million worldwide, even surpassing the original. Behind the scenes, however, Bruce clashed with the director over how realistic the action should be. He resisted cartoonish stunts, insisting the danger had to feel authentic. That attention to detail and insistence on realism kept pushing his career forward. By the time the third film arrived in 1995, his salary had risen to $15 million. Not everything worked, though. The sequel to Look Who's Talking, released in late 1990, flopped. It made only $47 million and was panned by critics. Bruce had recorded all his lines in just 3 days, and later admitted the script hadn't been ready. He even sued the producer, claiming he was owed a $2 million profit share, but the case was thrown out. It was a hard reminder that quick money didn't always mean lasting success. Then came a turning point in 1994 with Pulp Fiction. Quentin Tarantino cast Bruce as Butch, a boxer who refuses to throw a fight. The film didn't just revive his career, it made audiences see him in a new light. Gritty, real, and unafraid of risk. He took home only $800,000 for the role, far less than his usual fee, but he didn't care. For him, it was about the story. The film earned over $200 million and won the Oscar for Best Original Screenplay. While Bruce wasn't nominated, critics and fans finally began to take him seriously as more than just an action star. The following year, he went further with 12 Monkeys, released in late 1995. He played a broken man from a post-apocalyptic future, losing 20 pounds for the role and visiting mental hospitals to prepare. During filming, he even fractured his shoulder doing a stunt, but pushed through. The film grossed more than $160 million and earned 2 Oscar nominations. Bruce wasn't nominated, but no one could deny the depth of his performance. By 1997, Bruce shocked audiences again with The Fifth Element. The movie was bold, colorful, and chaotic, a futuristic spectacle in which Bruce played a cab driver who becomes Earth's last hope. At a cost of almost $90 million, it was one of the most expensive movies ever made at the time, and it pulled in over $260 million worldwide. He did many of his own stunts, endured wearing orange vests he hated, and yet everything came together. The movie became a cult classic. Then in 1998, Bruce headlined the massive disaster movie Armageddon. He played Harry Stamper, a rugged oil driller sent to stop an asteroid from destroying Earth. Released on July 1st, the film made more than $553 million worldwide, the year's biggest hit. Behind the camera, though, tensions ran high. Bruce fought with director Michael Bay over cut scenes, especially the emotional family moments. He clashed with producer Jerry Bruckheimer and later admitted the experience was miserable. Still, his improvised farewell scene became one of the film's most powerful moments, helping it connect emotionally with audiences. Despite 4 Oscar nominations, Bruce ironically received a Razzie for Worst Actor in 1999, a strange twist given the box office success. Away from the screen, Bruce's personal life was making headlines. In July 1987, he met Demi Moore at a movie screening while she was still engaged to Alio Estes. 4 months later, on November 21st, they married in Las Vegas. Demi later revealed the wedding wasn't even planned. They were on their way to gamble when Bruce suggested they just tie the knot. A month later, they held a proper ceremony with about 100 guests, including Little Richard as the officiant. The sudden marriage cost under $1,000, but marked the start of a Hollywood power couple. Rumors swirled that Demi was pregnant before the wedding, but their first daughter, Rumor, was born exactly 9 months later in August 1988. The couple went on to have 3 daughters, Rumor in 1988, Scout in 1991, and Tallulah in 1994. They tried to juggle work and family by alternating movie projects, but the pressures of fame weighed heavily. By the mid-1990s, Demi was one of the highest-paid actresses in Hollywood, earning a record $12.5 million for Striptease in 1996. At the same time, rumors of infidelity began swirling around both of them. Bruce was linked to models and Demi to her co-stars. In 1995, Bruce reportedly stormed off a film set after an argument, fueling speculation about trouble at home. Though they maintained a public image of stability, cracks were forming behind the scenes. In 1998, after 11 years together, they separated. Their divorce was finalized in October 2000. On the surface, the split looked amicable, but in reality, they fought bitterly over their $200 million fortune. Bruce paid Demi up to $90 million, making it one of Hollywood's most expensive divorces. They also negotiated custody of their daughters. Bruce told Rolling Stone they stayed friends for the kids, though insiders said it was difficult. Demi kept their Idaho ranch, while Bruce continued to ride the success of Armageddon. The divorce revealed the private struggles behind his superstar image. Yet surprisingly, Bruce and Demi managed to remain close even after the split. Demi attended Bruce's 2009 wedding to Emma Hemming, and in 2019 she was there again when Bruce and Emma renewed their vows. During the 2020 lockdown, they even quarantined together in Idaho with their children, sharing family photos online. Demi later stood by Bruce after his 2022 aphasia diagnosis and the 2023 news of frontotemporal dementia. Their blended family demonstrated that love and loyalty don't always end with marriage. Still, Bruce faced darker scandals. In 1992, a woman claimed he had fathered her child from a one-night stand in 1991. A DNA test costing about $5,000 cleared him, but the case tarnished his public image. As someone celebrated as a devoted dad, the scandal didn't fit his reputation. Though Demi stood by him, insiders said it added strain to their marriage. In 1999, Bruce starred in The Sixth Sense, a quiet psychological thriller that stunned audiences. Playing child psychologist Malcolm Crowe, he earned $14 million. The film's shocking twist, that Crowe had been dead the entire time, became one of cinema's most famous reveals. The film grossed nearly $673 million worldwide, held the #1 spot for 5 weeks, and became the second biggest movie of 1999 after Star Wars: The Phantom Menace. Though Bruce wasn't nominated for an Oscar, the role rejuvenated his career. He had kept the twist secret from nearly everyone and improvised many of his scenes to make his character more believable. In 2000, he reunited with director M. Night Shyamalan for Unbreakable, portraying David Dunn, a man who survives a train crash and slowly discovers he may be a real-life superhero. The film carried a staggering $75 million budget, partly because Bruce earned around $20 million and co-star Samuel L. Jackson received $10 million. Although it grossed $248 million, the high costs sparked tensions with Disney, and expensive reshoots only added to the strain. While the film later developed a devoted fan base and became part of a trilogy, at the time it nearly ended Shyamalan's career. Long before his movie stardom, Bruce had also tried music. In 1987, he released The Return of Bruno, adopting the persona Bruno Rattolini to perform covers of classic songs. His single Respect Yourself climbed to #5 on the Billboard charts, while Under the Boardwalk hit #2 in the UK. The album sold over 500,000 copies and went gold, but critics were brutal. Rolling Stone called it tone-deaf, and Bruce was ridiculed so heavily that he stopped pursuing music professionally by 1989. Still, he occasionally performed live, including at events like Farm Aid, though the backlash had left emotional scars. In 2001, he was back in the tabloids with rumors from the filming of Bandits. Co-starring Billy Bob Thornton and Cate Blanchett, the film was dogged by gossip that Bruce and Blanchett were having an affair. Ashton Kutcher, then dating another actress on set, allegedly grew suspicious, further fueling speculation. Demi later addressed it in her 2019 memoir, though Blanchett later dismissed the rumors as false. Still, the scandal overshadowed the film, which made only $67 million against its $75 million budget. The following year, Bruce suffered another setback with Heart's War. Playing a colonel in a World War II prison camp, he collected $15 million for a film that cost $70 million but grossed only $32 million. MGM lost over $50 million and its stock price dropped. The disappointment hit Bruce hard. He admitted it made him question his career. He entered therapy and stepped back from big projects. Yet in 2007, Bruce returned to his most famous role, He brought John McClane back in Live Free or Die Hard, this time battling cyber terrorists. Despite the toned-down PG-13 rating, the movie exploded at the box office, grossing $383 million worldwide. Behind the scenes, however, production remained difficult, showing that even during a triumphant return, things were never simple. During a high-speed chase, a stunt went wrong, and Willis slammed his head hard enough to suffer a concussion. This wasn't his first close call on set. Back during the original Die Hard, he had nearly been killed by an explosion and permanently lost hearing in his left ear from the deafening gunfire. Even in the middle of tense action sequences, his co-star Justin Long kept the mood light by pulling pranks, like sneaking oatmeal onto Willis's seat. Directed by Len Wiseman, the film went on to gross over $134 million in the U.S. alone. Just a year earlier, in 2006, Willis had made a surprising career shift. Instead of bullets and blood, he lent his voice to a fast-talking raccoon named RJ in Over the Hedge, a family comedy about hungry animals invading the suburbs. Nobody expected him in a project like this, but he pulled it off so well that the film became a global hit, earning $339 million worldwide. Willis was reportedly paid $5 million for his voice work. Released on May 19th, the film proved to be a fun success, with co-stars like Gary Shandling and Wanda Sykes helping bring the Forrest gang to life. Willis made RJ sly and hilarious, a raccoon tricking his friends into helping him repay a debt to a bear. It was one of the rare chances fans had to hear him in a children's movie, showing a completely different side of him at the height of his career. In 2010, Willis returned to familiar ground, starring as Frank Moses, a retired CIA agent, in Red. The action comedy grossed nearly $200 million worldwide and featured a powerhouse cast: Morgan Freeman, John Malkovich, and Helen Mirren. Their chemistry was electric. But behind the scenes, things weren't as smooth. Willis was reportedly exhausted, and his mood swings caused tension with the crew. Despite the drama, critics praised the film, and the 2013 sequel brought in another $148 million, though audiences felt it lacked the magic of the original. Still, Red reminded audiences that Willis was an action heavyweight, even if time was beginning to catch up with him. That same year, he appeared briefly in The Expendables, alongside Stallone and Schwarzenegger, a dream lineup for action fans. But by 2013, controversy struck. Willis was offered $3 million for 4 days of work on Expendables 3, but he demanded $4 million instead. Stallone blasted him publicly, calling him greedy and lazy. Within 3 days, Harrison Ford was announced as his replacement. The feud made headlines. The first Expendables had made $274 million back in 2010, and Willis's role, though small, had been unforgettable. Ironically, his other 2013 release, Red 2, made $80 million, suggesting his demands may have been standard negotiation. Still, the damage was done. By 2015, Willis's career had shifted again. He was appearing in a flood of low-budget, straight-to-video action movies. One of them, Vice, saw him playing the owner of a resort filled with lifelike androids. The film tried to capture a futuristic vibe like Blade Runner, but critics hated it. Released in January, it made barely a ripple, and reviewers slammed it as dull and lazy. Observers noted that Willis was cranking out up to 5 such films a year, with performances that felt hollow. His spark seemed to be fading. In 2022, his family revealed he had been battling aphasia, a brain condition affecting language. Suddenly, those hollow roles made sense. They weren't passion projects, but signs that something was deeply wrong. Away from Hollywood, Willis's personal life brought surprises of its own. In 2009, he shocked fans by marrying British model Emma Hemming. The two had met in 2007 on the set of Perfect Stranger. Despite their 24-year age gap, Willis was 54, Hemming just 30. They married in a private ceremony at his Turks and Caicos home on March 21st. Demi Moore and their daughters attended. And a few days later, the couple made it official in Beverly Hills. 10 years later, they returned to the same beach to renew their vows, this time surrounded by all 5 of their daughters. The ceremony was intimate, peaceful, and a rare moment of steadiness in his whirlwind life. That steadiness didn't last. In 2015, intruders attempted to break into the family's Idaho ranch. The attempt was stopped, but the incident was terrifying. The family immediately upgraded security with gates, cameras, and armed guards, costing nearly $500,000 annually. The most disturbing part was that one of the intruders had personal photos of the Willis family, proving the break-in was targeted. Known for his toughness on screen, Willis responded by taking private defense training. The darker shadows of his life stretched back further. In 1989, while riding high on moonlighting, Willis was arrested at his Hollywood Hills home after shoving a police officer who responded to a noisy party. He was drunk, shirtless, and had re-injured a collarbone he'd previously broken skiing. Charges were dropped after he completed community service, but the incident was a wake-up call. Decades later, in his 2018 memoir, Willis admitted to battles with alcohol, revealing blackouts and bar fights. He credited Alcoholics Anonymous for turning his life around. What stunned fans was how well he had hidden those struggles behind his confident on-screen persona. Then, during the COVID-19 lockdowns in 2020, Willis once again surprised the world. He quarantined not with Emma, but with ex-wife Demi Moore and their 3 adult daughters at her Idaho home. Emma remained in Los Angeles with their younger girls after an accident left little Evelyn with an injured foot. For weeks, Bruce and Demi lived together again, posting photos in matching pajamas, playing games, and spending time as a family. It was surreal to the public, but it showed that love doesn't always disappear after divorce. Even Emma left supportive comments on their photos. By the time Bruce returned to LA, their unusual quarantine had become one of the most viral family stories of the pandemic. In March 2022, his family issued a heartbreaking statement. Bruce had been diagnosed with aphasia and was stepping away from acting immediately. He was 67. Suddenly, all the oddities in his recent performances made sense. He had been struggling with speech, sometimes relying on earpieces or even body doubles. Directors had quietly adjusted to work around his confusion. For an actor once able to command the screen with a glance, it was devastating. By February 2023, the news grew worse. Doctors confirmed his condition had progressed to frontotemporal dementia, a rare and incurable disease that strips away language, personality, and mobility. Emma later admitted she thought his growing distance had been personal. Instead, it was the illness. His charm faded, his movements slowed, and he spoke less and less. On August 15, 2025, Bruce entered a specialized care home near his family. Emma called it the hardest decision of her life. Their daughters, Mabel and Evelyn, just 13 and 11, were spared the hardest parts of watching him decline. The facility cost more than $200,000 a year, staffed around the clock. His family visited often, cherishing what moments they had left together. By mid-2025, Willis could no longer speak. The man who had once shouted iconic lines over gunfire now communicated with gestures and rare expressions. And yet sometimes a spark would break through. He would laugh. That same booming, unmistakable laugh, or hear a song from his 1987 album, The Return of Bruno, and his eyes would light up. Those moments, though fleeting, were priceless. They reminded everyone that behind the silence and the illness, Bruce Willis, one of Hollywood's great voices, was still there, even as the world grew quieter around him.